Everyone loves to hate on Portland, but that doesn't stop us from topping some of the country's best food lists.
And today, we're going to talk about why Portland's food scene shines. We moved to Portland, Oregon 6 years ago, and we built a life that we love. And we're here to help you do the same thing. Now, my name's Aaron, this is Brianna, and we have a local real estate company right here in Portland, Oregon. If you guys have any questions about moving here, go ahead and reach out and give us a call. My information's right down there. Now, today we have a really fun topic. As you can guess, we're talking about the food scene. Now, Food and Wine named Portland the 5th best city for food and wine in the nation.
One of the cool things about Portland is that trends often start here and then spread into the rest of the country, and we're going to talk about some of those trends as reasons why the food scene is so great here.
And what better way than to start talking about the place that's right here behind us?
The number one reason why the Portland food scene is just so good is the craftsmanship. And that really goes along with the creative culture here in Portland. Portland is such an artistic, creative city where people are really into what they do and they turn it into a craft. And food is one of the ways that artists express their creativity. So today we're in the Northwest and we're right in front of Ken's Artisan Bakery. This bakery opened in 2001 and it has also been named on many best bakery lists, one of the best bakeries in the country. The owner, the founder of this, Ken Forkish. How great is that last name for a food person?
Yeah, that's his
Ken
real last name.
Forkish.
Yeah.
He also owns Ken's Artisan Pizza in the Southeast, also named the 5th best pizza in the US and on
5th best pizza in the US. I had to ask her to repeat that. I mean, 5th best in the whole US for pizza. I'm sure there's some New Yorkers that might be watching this that might have some things to say, but it is really good. Quick anecdote, you were making pizza dough a couple of years ago by scratch, and it was his recipe.
Yeah, I have his book, which is, gosh, I get the words mixed up, salt, water, yeast, flour, something like that. I was making homemade bread and pizza dough using his book and his method. And he has a really fun background story that I think would resonate with a lot of people, which is that he worked in tech in Silicon Valley for 20 years and then wanted to do something more creative and ultimately went to train with master chefs in France and in the US before choosing Portland. And he chose Portland in part because it has such a creative culture and food scene. And then he added so much to that food scene.
I mean, how cool is that? I mean, what a great backstory.
Yeah, it really is inspiring.
And that's just a great sampling and example of the craftsmanship that goes into the food scene here in Portland. And his story, I feel like, it's so unique, but it's not the only one.
No, not at all. But it's so inspiring. You want to be a part of it and support it. And we don't live close enough to come to this bakery every day, but there are restaurants and grocery stores around Portland that stock his bread. So I go to Zupan's often to buy our bread because I can get Ken's Artisan Bakery bread there. So let's go get you a pastry that you can eat while we walk around.
Let's go.
So Aaron just mowed down the Oregon croissant.
Wow, that was delicious. So good. Highly recommend it.
And I got a walnut loaf for the kids and I. And now we're gonna walk and talk about more, but craftsmanship is really the key element that I think brings the food vibe to Portland. A trend that maybe didn't start here, but that Portland does really, really well.
And that is the food cart scene. Now, the food cart scene is amazing here. And what is it,
600?
600. There's over 600 food trucks all throughout Portland. And there's a ton of them that are actually in pods, what they call a food truck pod, or a food cart pod. There's a really good one in Beaverton, and it's got to have at least 25 food trucks there. And they also have a stationary little outdoor brewery bar.
And most food carts are gathered together in these pods where there's at least a handful of food carts that are gathered around a common seating area. And the thing that I like about that is that everyone can get whatever kind of cuisine they want. and then sit together. And it's also a good way to kind of eat outside no matter what the weather is in Portland. It just gets you out. With us going out to eat with the kids, like they can get whatever they want to eat, we can get whatever we want. And the food cart scene flourishes because it covers every cuisine that you could imagine. It's also more affordable than your average restaurant, but it's often like a more innovative type of food and less expensive, and also just like friendly and casual, which I think really matches the overall culture here in Portland. It's a very friendly, casual group of people.
Food trucks in general kind of have that connotation of, hey, it's not a very good meal, it's really cheap and thrown together. And I think Portland has done a really good job in, turning that image around. And so people don't think of that anymore, especially here in Portland. You're gonna get they could be a, very highly regarded chef that has created, those dishes.
Right, because they can do it like very sort of low capital investment and just pour everything into the food that they're making. Yeah. And tell them what you were telling me about someone you were talking to last night who wants to start
someone I was talking with.
Floating food cart pod.
Yeah, a floating food cart pod.
At a marina on the river.
In a marina on the river floating. I just think it's such a cool idea.
And I think it's so Portland, and Portland will be so here for that. Our kids were like, floating food. We were talking about it this morning.
And I think it's, once he gets it up off the ground, I'll definitely make a visit and do a little video of it.
Next highlight of the Portland food scene is proximity to Willamette Valley wine country. So the Willamette Valley is home to over 700 wineries. It's pretty crazy,
700.
right?
I didn't even realize it was 700.
700. And it's one of the premier growing places in the world for Pinot Noir. It's really been esteemed to be considered one of the top places for Pinot Noir, along with a lot of other wines. And the wineries there range from small and quaint to elegant and extremely luxurious. Like, there are some wine tasting experiences in the Willamette Valley that are to die for, and food and wine pairings. And then there are...
We need to go experience some of these.
Yeah.
We really
and we have been to some, but there are also some great little towns, little wine country towns, agricultural towns around Portland in Willamette Valley, like Dundee and Carlton and McMinnville and just so many others. And I think that proximity to wine country just has that certain aesthetic and lifestyle, and it brings to Portland the farm to table vibes and that freshness. And also here in Portland, there are a number of tasting rooms for some of the local wineries, and that it influences our
And we've done a lot of those.
Absolutely, influences the restaurants and the food here. There's a great place in Wilsonville called the Kitchen at Middle Ground Farms. I love to send clients there as for gifts because it's such a special experience. They have cooking classes, and then they also have dinners where they'll invite a local winery to do to be like the guest of honor, and then they'll do a meal that pairs really well with that winery.
And which one of that one that we went to? Which winery was that? That was Lang Winery.
And we got so lucky because we just happened to get seated with the winemaker at the head of the table, so we got to talk to him the whole time.
Yeah, and he was such a nice guy,
and
so down to earth, so friendly.
His parents had started the winery when the Willamette Valley was like just barely starting back in the 70s, so he was able to tell us those stories. Their Chardonnay was excellent.
Yeah, really, really good. And that's one of the things that's really surprised me is how good the wines here. And actually, I now prefer the wines here than the California wines. I mean, especially the Pinots, but even a lot of the Chardonnays too. Yeah,
the Chardonnay here is, I think, a little bit crisper, a little bit drier. It's not quite as like oaky and buttery as a lot of the California, or sweet.
And I've kind of been personally steering away from, I don't know if just because I'm getting older or what, but I just don't like the as sweet, white wines anymore. So kind of works out.
We actually have clients that moved to Portland specifically because they came out here to go wine tasting from the East Coast. and they loved it.
Yeah, and hey guys, if you're watching. Yeah, one last thing I'll add to that subject is, I mean, if you haven't come out here and sampled just the experience of going to a couple wineries, I highly recommend it. You know, if you come out here for, you know, a 3-day weekend, or even if it's a 2-day weekend, you're thinking about moving here, come, you know, look at some neighborhoods and then take a day for yourselves and go explore a little bit of the countryside and go to at least one of the wineries.
Yeah, and if you want tips, reach out, because we're happy to, you know, point you in the direction of something that's close to wherever you're staying and exploring.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there are a couple of communities that are kind of closer to Portland and border wine country that are very popular, like Sherwood. Sherwood is a really booming area, very popular right now, has a great school district, and it's also right there on the edge of Newburgh and wine country.
Yep. It's in the top 3 actually in the state for school districts right now.
Okay, let's go on to our next topic, but really quick before we do, we're walking on Northwest 23rd Avenue in Northwest Portland, and I just have to say, we came down here probably 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, and shot a video during the pandemic, and it just feels like it's really bounced back. So it's like so lovely down here today. All of the businesses and restaurants are like open and bustling, and it just feels really good down here today.
Yeah, no, it really does. It's made a big difference, even just in the last year, from last summer and even the summer before that. So I guess a year and a half ago. I mean, just a huge difference from a year and a half ago. And every year since the pandemic, you know, basically like 2022, 2021, 22, where it was kind of the worst there. I mean, it's just infinitely better. I can't tell you, you know, if you just kind of walking around here, you know, before it was kind of crazy, just with, you know, tents everywhere and people sleeping in doorways. And now I'm not seeing any of that. I've seen, you know, maybe 1 or 2, you know, vagrancy people, but you're going to get that in any city, but no big tents, no people sleeping in doorways. So
this street has always reminded me, I used to live in San Francisco, and this street has always reminded me of Fillmore, if you're familiar with San Francisco. And you know, several years ago, it was starting to make me very sad down here, and now it feels like that again.
Yeah, the life is definitely, you know, getting put back into it. And here we are, and it's kind of on a rainy day too.
And let's pause for a second, because speaking of craftsmanship.
yeah, here's Salt and Straw here, right behind us. This is our favorite ice cream place.
Yeah, so if you're familiar with Salt and Straw, if you maybe live in LA, where there's also Salt and Straw. Salt and Straw started in Portland, on Northeast Alberta, the part of Portland I used to live in, and it's the best.
It's my personal favorite ice cream place, and the kids as well. Although they're at that age where they're wanting to, they kind of like the soft serve, which I don't like as much, right? And this is like the real deal.
But this is just like a perfect example of craftsmanship. Like, they take their ice cream to the next level. When they do their flavors of the month, sometimes they're like a little out there.
Yeah.
You just have to go with it.
Yeah. Okay, this next subject we're going to talk about is breweries, craft breweries. Now, craft brew is, I kind of like feel it's like synonymous with Portland.
Portland is the mecca.
It really is the mecca. And if you love a good crafted beer, then Portland is the place for you. There are over 80 breweries right here in Portland.
And I think especially a West Coast IPA.
Yes.
Is Portland's like tried and true, but there are a lot of other.
Absolutely, yeah. Whatever kind of beer you like, Portland's gonna have it for you. Now, you know, craft beer is everywhere in America, but it's especially a mecca for it right here in Portland. There's so many local little breweries all around. One of my favorites is Gigantic Brewery right here in Portland. It's in Southeast Portland. Another one that's a favorite is 10 Barrel Brewing Company. That's in downtown Portland. And that's a really big one. If you're in downtown, it's a great place to stop in for food and a beer. And
we also ate at that brewery in Bend. And Bend, just as an offhand, has some great beer as well. Deschutes is based in Bend, and Yeah.
And there's a Deschutes here too.
Yes,
Deschutes
there is. Tasting room here. And I love Von Eber. I think their beer is so delicious. So again, that craftsmanship in Portland, like some people take beer brewing to an art. And I lived with some friends when I lived here many years ago, and he was like a home brewer. You know, he brewed his own beer and baked his own sourdough bread, and like that's how some of these small craft beer groups start, is with just like people home brewing and getting super into it.
If you come to Portland for a visit and you don't live here, I highly recommend, Google the breweries here in Portland, do a little bit of research, and you can find one that's, that's near where you are, and hopefully maybe they'll even have one that's walking distance to wherever you're staying, and go visit it. Go get a lunch there or a dinner. The breweries here are also really known for their good burgers here. Just kind of go experiment and kind of find a place that speaks to you.
Yeah.
And they're really, they're just very casual, and it's more just like a cool place to go, get a little taste of the local scene, the local people. Okay, last but not least on our list.
Definitely not least, this is my favorite topic, coffee.
Coffee. That is your favorite drink probably right now?
Yes,
Coffee?
The kids actually asked me recently what I loved more, coffee or kids. And I said kids.
Yeah, good answer, good answer.
But I do love coffee, and good coffee, like people think of Seattle when they think of coffee, and yes, Seattle has good coffee and Starbucks started in Seattle, but I think the really good coffee started in Portland.
And why is that?
It's just like the coffee that started here, Stumptown, and some of the brands that we have here are just that different style, like a lighter roast, a more flavorful, fresher, like the elixir of life coffee is Portland coffee. And I lived in Portland about, 15 years ago, and really got spoiled by, it was like the burgeoning of all of this amazing coffee here. And then I moved to LA, and like there was no good coffee in LA 15 years ago. Like truly, there was like one good coffee place, the Commissary on Fairfax? And it was like the only good coffee shop. And then over the several years that I lived in LA, all of these great coffee shops started opening that were the Portland style of coffee.
Yeah, and I was guilty of, in college, it would be a treat to be able to go to a Starbucks. For a Starbucks. At home, I'd have my Starbucks coffee, beans that I would grind, and I felt like I was such the connoisseur of coffee, just having Starbucks coffee.
It's just gotten so good.
Yeah, and now I love the Portland coffee, just that brighter, lighter roast, way more than the dark roast. So there you go. And
then it's just a big part of the culture, I think, with the weather and the sort of the colder, rainier winters, that cozy coffee shop vibe, working in a coffee shop. It's just so Portland. And the coffee shops are, yes, a little bit hip because this is Portland, but some of my favorite coffee shops, I would say Heart is my all-time favorite coffee shop, and I'm really lucky because they also serve Heart at my favorite coffee shop on the coast.
Oh yeah.
And that's why their coffee is so good.
Where's the Heart in Portland?
There's one in the southeast. I don't know where the other ones are. Roseline, there's several Roselines around town, and we just got one in Lake Oswego. Yeah. Their coffee is so good.
It's very, very good.
Upper Left has really good coffee. They're in Ladd's Edition, and then Morse also serves Upper Left. Yep. The Barista, there's so many good coffee shops. So whatever neighborhood you're in, there is going to be an amazing coffee shop nearby. And again, that's part of food culture. If you're out at a restaurant for breakfast or lunch, they are serving a locally roasted coffee there in Portland for sure, because Portland really cares about supporting local businesses, and the local food is no different.
And that's one of my favorite things about Portland's culture is they really do want to support local businesses like us. We have a local business, and people really want to support each other. And that's one of the really cool things that I like about living here. I hope you guys have found value in this video. I really enjoyed talking about all the amazing food and drink experiences.
Stuffing a croissant in your face.
Stuffing a croissant in my face. And hope that gives you guys a little bit more information if you're coming out here for a visit. Now go ahead and reach out and give us a call. If you guys are thinking about moving out here or coming out for a visit, go ahead and reach out. Be happy to share any information with you guys. Information's right down there. Now stay tuned for the next video coming up right now.